Hi guys, it's Megan here, the faithful fibromyalgia warrior, coming to you live from Gravenhurst, Ontario, from my son's place. This is just the spare room. So today's topic that I thought of, why carnivore? And there's a lot of good reasons. Now, for anybody who isn't sure what that means, carnivore simply refers to the fact of humans eating the flesh of animals for the nutrition from the protein and the fats in order to get health and strength and to grow and look after our bodies. Basically, something we've been doing as humans, as a species, as long as we've existed. And actually, going back to Genesis, and other references in the Bible, um, God made it very clear that the animals that he created were there for us to consume to help nourish our bodies. Now, I also accept and totally believe and agree that as humans, we've had times where we would have had to have eaten some plant materials, okay, in order to prevent starvation. Um, for example, if there was a long period of time between our first meal and our next meal or when the next hunt happened. And so when we, as a human species, found things like berries or some fruits, even honey at times, we would have eaten those things for energy to help get us through until an animal source of food was then found and shared with our local tribes, with the groups of people at that time. Don't believe we were ever intended to consume vast amounts of grains and cereals and nuts and seeds as we do now. It's something that we clearly would have done at some point, again, eating something to prevent complete starvation in the absence of animal sources of protein. Um, However, it became a lot easier as a people to grow things and eat that because you don't have to put in the effort to hunt down and chase after wheat or corn like you would if you're hunting lamb or even beef from cows, or certainly things like venison from deer. Okay, so well, I accept that we have had some limited amounts of plants in our diet, obviously, at times, especially when animal sources of food were scarce. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily the best way to go or that we should only eat plants at the absence of all sources of meat. So carnivore is someone who is a carnivore is somebody who only consumes animal sources of fat and protein. That basically means if you whether you eat poultry or some kind of bird, whether it's duck or pheasant or turkey or chicken, um, and there may be others I can't think of, but those are the common ones you can certainly get from farms, from butchers, from the grocery store. Whether you choose to eat things like lamb or beef, bison, deer, depending on where in the world you live and what you can access. Perhaps you live in a part of the world where zebra meat is more common, and obviously you can have that. Some people consume horse meat. Okay, it is still an animal, it can still be eaten. Commonly, it would be for most of us, that would be things like deer, um, caribou, bison, um, beef, as in cow, or lamb. You could also choose to eat fish or seafood. You could also choose to eat multiple cuts of pork, whether it's pork belly, spare ribs, short ribs, baby back ribs, whether it's sausages, whether it's bacon, whether it's lardons, whether it's lean cuts of pork loin, like pork tenderloin or shoulder, whatever cuts you prefer. Those are sources of food as well. And it includes anything that was ever once part of the animals, whether that's eggs, and that includes fish eggs because it came from a fish, which is not a plant, obviously, as I'm sure you guys are well aware. Um, Eggs from any sort of bird, of course. Um, or that can include some things like milk and dairy if you do not have an intolerance to lactose. So there you can have dairy, okay? Because it comes from an animal, therefore it is an animal product, even if it's not the skeletal muscle meat or the fats that come with that. It is from an animal, therefore, yes, technically it is considered carnivore. So if you prefer to have a cup of coffee with heavy cream or full fat milk, or you enjoy butter or cheese, or certain types of things like kefir, which is fermented milk, I believe, you can have that. You can also enjoy sour cream, and of course, any sort of full fat, non sweetened, kind of more Greek style yogurts. That's all carnivore. Okay, it is. Now, I consume butter because in the process of making butter, all the fat is kept and almost all of the lactose is removed. So it doesn't upset me or affect the fact that I have a lactose intolerance. Okay. And even if I was to have one or two cappuccinos a week, that small amount of full fat milk isn't enough to cause me a lot of issues. However, if I was to have milk in every cup of coffee, yes. If I was to eat more than one or two pieces of cheese a week, yes. If I was to start consuming things like um, Greek yogurt or kefir, absolutely. It would throw my IBS into disarray. It certainly causes my rosacea to flare up massively. And to be honest, when I consume a lot of that stuff, it just makes me more hungry and I end up eating a lot more because milk and dairy products do have carbohydrates in them naturally. They're not like added, they're not processed like a cake or a cookie or, you know, going out and getting a ready meal with sauce in it. It's not that type of carb. It's a naturally occurring carbohydrate like you would get from fruits and vegetables, but they do exist. Okay. So someone who is carnivore, again, if you're going to be, depends how strict you want to be. Someone who is super strict would perhaps lean closer to what is referred to as the lion diet, which is nothing but beef, typically in the form of a steak, um, non-aged, maybe lamb, salt, and water. And it is the ultimate extreme elimination diet. And people like Michaela Peterson and her father, Jordan Peterson, certainly are much more on the lion diet side of the spectrum because they have had so many health issues. They have to be. Okay. And I know that Michaela, if you watch any of her podcasts, she talks about how she ended up reversing. She developed rheumatoid arthritis when she was younger. And this is what keeps it at bay. So she eats zero plant of any kind. She cannot do aged meats because a lot of the aged meats, which would not be an issue for most of us, cause in her a histamine reaction. Same thing happens with processed meats like deli lunch meats, whether it's chicken based, whether it's something like pepperoni or salami or something pork based, doesn't matter. If it's smoked, if it's um, seasoned, if it's cured, um, it will cause something of a histamine reaction. Most of us, it's so minor we would barely even notice, if at all. But there are some of us who are super sensitive and it does cause reaction. For me, when I eat that stuff, which is why I don't, but if I did, causes my rosacea to flare up. Okay, it also affects my IBS. So that's one of the strict extreme ends of carnivore, which you don't have to do. Okay, you don't have to necessarily. If you have a load of inflammation, autoimmune conditions, gut issues, not just IBS, but if you have inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, anything like that, you may find that you have to super strictly eliminate stuff from your diet. Now, if you heal, like leaky gut, that type of thing, as you manage to heal, and again, I can't tell you how long that would take. For some people, it might take a few months. For some people, it might take years. Depends on how long you've lived with this condition and how many decades of crap you've been putting in your body. Okay? Truthfully. But you may reach a point of healing where you might be able to reintroduce some things into your diet. You might. Some people can, some people do. Or you may be like me, in which case you may never eat another carbohydrate again. Sorry, take that back a step. I can never eat another plant form of carbohydrates ever in my life because it causes me almost instantaneous reactions. Right? That's me. That's how sensitive my stomach is. That's how quick my IBS flares up, how much my rosacea acts up, and how it affects everything else. So, why carnivore, which was the initial title and question for today's topic? Because for me, it has given me the most greatest healing physically I've ever had in my entire life. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say it had nothing to do with wanting to lose weight because it did initially. I approached carnivore in June of 2020. So 4 years ago, today, I started carnivore. And it wasn't like it was an instant, ta-da, I've lost 100 pounds overnight. No, it wasn't like that. The results were fast because when I decided to start carnivore, I cut, other than coffee, okay, I cut everything else out of my diet right away. All the plants, the nuts, the seeds, leafy greens, all the vegetables, whether they were starchy or not, all the fruits, everything. I cut everything that was a plant that eating wise out of my diet, cut it out fully, right? Completely. And so that's why for me, within 3 weeks, I just lost 30, I lost between 20 and 30 pounds in the first 3 weeks. Now, I'm not saying that because I want to promise you, hey, if you need to lose a lot of weight, that's what'll happen for you. I can't promise that. You might lose more, you might lose less. But I think what you'll find is once you clear all of that stuff out of your body, you'll start to see weight come off very quickly. And yes, a lot of it will be inflammatory water weight that your body's been retaining and holding on to. But it's still loss. You're still getting rid of it. It's still not hanging on you, which is amazing. So why carnivore? Yes, I did start to lose weight, and that motivated me to keep going. But honestly, what's kept me going for 4 years is all the other healing I've had. Within a couple of months, I noticed my brain fog, my fibromyalgia brain fog that was always there was almost completely gone. It felt like. Now I've had even more of it lift since that time because again, what happens is we have all the stuff that's in our body that we can see. Like I was 100 pounds overweight. That was all gone after just 6 months, right? Just and for me personally, again, that doesn't mean you're going to lose that much or that fast, but that's what happened in my case. So I'm saying you to if you are someone who is struggling with obesity, type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetic, type 2 diabetic, hypertension, onset of fatty liver disease, which I had, underactive thyroid, which I had, as well as Raynaud's, as well as severe anxiety and depression. And I was bulimic for over 30 years. Okay, so not all of those things were fixed instantly. However, when I initially got the crap out of my diet, and I got through that really kind of sucky, crappy phase of transitioning off all the carbohydrates and into a strictly animal-based way of eating. Once I got through the initial transition, it started to get a lot easier. And I didn't wake up suddenly wide awake at 7 o'clock every morning and just ready to go with my day. In fact, a lot of days I still get tired during the day. And part of that is because maybe I'm almost 52. I don't know. But you know what? I look at the fact that a year ago today, I still had to use my wheelchair to get around. But as of October of last year, I've not used it one time. I have been able to walk everywhere, take the dogs out regularly, just go for walks because I wanted to and because I could. After 9 years in a wheelchair. Now that is God's miraculous healing, okay? Which never happened when I was vegetarian. It never happened when I was eating. Majority of my food was plant-based with a little bit of chicken thrown in. Because again, for those of you who don't know, or I will let you know, I hate fish. It absolutely grosses me. I hate the taste. And it's one of those things where I don't find it filling and I react to fish. I'm not sure why it is. I don't know if it's because fish can often have a bit of mercury content and I'm hypersensitive to certain things. It always makes me feel itchy when I eat it. So I don't have a full-blown allergy, but I do seem to have a sensitivity to fish. So I don't eat it. Love shrimp. Love shrimp. Shrimp, however, is relatively lean. So unless it's like soaking in butter, it's not very filling for me. Okay. For people who love fish and seafood and can eat it and feel satisfied and love it, fantastic. More power to you. I wish I could enjoy fish, but I don't. So I don't eat it. And as I've shared in other videos, even when it comes to pork, because pork is actually it's a relatively lean meat. That the muscle meat from pigs is relatively lean, which is why it was promoted certainly through the 80s when I was a kid. It was considered the other lean meat. So you had chicken breasts without the skin and lean cuts of pork. Now, if you're going to go carnivore, I would highly suggest if you are going to eat things like pork chops, um, pork loin, which there's nothing saying you can't eat them. I just find that they're such a lean cut, I don't feel overly satisfied and I'm still hungry. Okay. So if you're trying to cut back and make sure you're not snacking throughout the day, certainly cook those things in lots and lots and lots of butter. That will help. Leave the fat trimmings on, like on a pork chop. Don't cut it off. Cut it with the pork, get it nice and crispy. It will be more satisfying. If you're going to eat bacon, and again, I have to be careful too. I love the bacon we get at the butcher's. We get it unsmoked, so it's lightly cured but not smoked. There's no additives, and it's nice, and it gets crispy and greasy and delicious. Ooh, I can almost picture it in my mouth right now. Much of the bacon that you get at the supermarket, that is not the case. Oftentimes, it has a lot of additives because it has to be able to last in a package on the shelf of the fridge, let's say for a week at a time. Okay, whereas when you get it from the butcher's, it's good for a few days. It doesn't have as long of a shelf life because it doesn't have all the preservatives and additives in it. Now, as Dr. Ken Berry would often say, bacon with some preservatives and additives is still better than a pack of cookies. And he's right. And if you're not super sensitive and it doesn't bother you, have at it. Buy all the bacon you can find. Okay. If you do have high levels of sensitivity or you seem to have a histamine reaction, you might want to switch from streaky bacon strips and try bacon lardons. You may want to see if there's a butcher near you where you can get it fresh, where it's got a whole lot less ingredients. Or you might want to just leave it to the side. And the same thing could be said for sausages. Okay. Um, they often are packed with a lot of things. So if you have an issue with histamines and you're super sensitive to things like preservatives and additives and flavorings, you maybe want to avoid pork at the beginning. Okay. Just for now, heal your gut, heal your body. You can always try adding it in. And if you seem to be okay with it, there you go, job done. Okay. Again, it doesn't mean it's forever necessarily. You might just have to leave this stuff out for now, just to make sure that you're getting your body healed and healthy. Okay. Um, I had someone ask me once, so does it always have to be steak? No, it doesn't have to be just steak. In fact, if you're female, one of the things you want to be careful of, because let's face it, we as women tend to be the ones who have had the most history of restricting and binging and purging and going on extreme diets and wrecking our metabolism and potentially for a lot of us screwing up our hormones. One of the things we need to get enough of is healthy sources of fat, animal sources of fat, to make cholesterol and keep our hormones balanced and producing to where they're supposed to. Okay. So, what I highly suggest is if you are going to do steak, and of course you can, it's not for me to tell you you can or cannot do this, but I would suggest if you're going to go to steak, get the fattier cuts. One, why? Because the leaner cuts, yes, the protein sources are excellent, obviously, but we also need that fat for the hormones that we need to produce to keep our bodies functioning, especially if we're not in menopause, especially if we want to have regular cycles. Maybe we're hoping to have children one day and we want to get those hormones going and regulating. Okay, but if we don't get enough fat in our diet, that's going to be really difficult or impossible to do. Um, so healthy sources of fat. So go for like even a New York strip loin. Okay, it's not the fattiest cut. It's not, in fact. Um, but it's certainly got more fat in it than um, uh, some of the other cuts. Go for the fattier cuts. Get like a ribeye. You know why ribeyes are amazing? Because they have so much fat and marbling for flavor. When you cook it up, yes, you get the meat, but you get the fat, and it is filling and satisfying. I always found by lean cuts of meat, even steak, that I can sometimes feel hungry after because it's the fat that gives us satiety. Okay. And it's the fat that we can burn into fuel. Protein is a really bad source of fuel. It is an excellent source of building muscles, which we still need, but that's not what our body will want to convert into fat ketones. That is actual fat that we burn as fuel. And if we can't burn it as fuel, we'll store it in our bodies and then we can get it off our bodies later on as well. Okay. Once we're not consuming carbohydrates. So go for the fattier cuts of steak, like a ribeye. Um, Even a New York cut is a good cut. You know, talk to your butcher, see what you can find at the grocery store. And again, if you are super sensitive and have a lot of histamines, make sure you avoid anything that's been aged. So you may actually have to source out either a local butcher. Um, I know there's a place in the States because Rebecca Heichman talks about them. So if you live in the US, this will be helpful. They are called Billy Doe meats, and they do not age their meats at all because she struggled with massive histamine intolerance for your standard matured meats because she tried when she first tried carnivore, it was beef, salt, and water, but she was reacting to the histamine. She was sorry having a histamine reaction to the fact that the meat was aged and that process was causing her issues. And anyways, North Star bison is one of them that she often recommends, and Billy Doe meats. Now, as to I don't know exactly where they are in the States or how far um, they ship their meats out or if you can get it sent to you if you're in other parts of the country, but look into it because she highly recommends both, and I hear nothing but good things about them. So if you don't know a rancher or you don't have a local butcher and everything in your local grocery store is aged meat and you have histamine intolerances, these are some things you might want to try instead. Okay. Um, but honestly, it does not have to be steak. Ground beef, ground chuck, super cheap for the most part. Don't worry about getting the lean or extra lean. Get the fattiest kind you can get. My personal preference is 20% fat. Um, Slightly more than that, and it tends to kind of run through me. That's the other thing, by the way. If you're not used to eating good sources of fat, like from an animal, like I wasn't, one of two things will happen. Either you're going to have a really hard time having a bowel movement, or it's going to suddenly come shooting out of you. But I promise you that will not last. Okay. That will pass as your body adjusts and adapts and gets used to digesting and metabolizing fats and proteins from animal sources. All right. It will take a little time, but God made our bodies in an amazing way and we are adaptive. So that isn't going to be forever. Okay. It will get better. And as far as chicken goes, I don't have an issue with chicken. I don't. Okay, but for me, chicken breast is super lean. So if you're gonna do chicken breast, leave the skin on because that's where all the good fat is underneath the skin. Eat all of it. Do chicken wings? Yes, that's darker meat, slightly darker and fattier meat. Do drumsticks, do chicken wings? Yes, absolutely. Um, when you cook it, try to cook it with lots of butter because it can get really, as anyone knows, it can get really dry. And again, it's such a super lean kind of meat that it's not going to be super satisfying. So you'll need to probably add in some fat. You can cook it up, throw in, I don't know, add some bacon to it, uh, cut it up into pieces and fry it up in the pan with some ground beef and egg yolks and top it off with bacon. Make like a casserole of some sort, like kind of like a chicken tofurkey, but do it with chicken and beef and bacon and eggs. I don't know, whatever your little heart desires, right? And all of that is awesome. And I share all these things because these are sort of things I've had to do along the way. Why do I do carnivore? Because I feel amazing. I'm not saying I'm never tired. I jet lag every time I travel. Okay, it took me a week to adjust to the time difference between England and here in Ontario. It's going to take me 2 weeks when I head back east because I'm going to lose that time, most likely. So I still get jet lagged. I can still get colds. I can still be tired or occasionally I get headaches. Sometimes I still get aches and pains if I've overdone it, if I haven't moved enough or I've moved too much. Okay. So it's not as if doing carnivore means I will never ever be sore ever again in my life, or that I'm ever going to get sick, or I'm never going to potentially struggle with things. Of course, we're humans, it's part of our experience. But I carnivore because compared to how horrible I would feel if I didn't, it's not worth it. And for me, it's not simply just a diet. It's like, oh, I got to eat eggs and bacon again. No, for me, it is a joyful experience of eating healthy and nutrition because I've gotten my life back. You know, I got my mind back. I got my faith back, my dedication and commitment and devotion to God back, which was so important to me. But I've had all these other little moments where I can make videos like this. I can talk to people and not wonder what I've just said. Well, sometimes I do, fair enough. But I can enjoy life. You know, food is supposed to be nourishing and it's supposed to fuel our bodies. It's not supposed to be our source of entertainment. Entertainment should be from other things, social interactions with our loved ones, with our friends, spending time in great places with people we meet or people we already know. That should be the point of life, right? And in fact, I am so grateful and feel so blessed because of all that I have. That's why I took the time. I spent a year almost to complete my certification as a nutrition coach because I want to help people one on one. I will continuously make comments and content and share what I'm learning and, things to think about here on YouTube. Okay. Absolutely. I have no intention of stopping that. But I also want to share what I have learned with people on a one-to-one setting. Not everyone needs that. And I understand that. Not everyone needs that. Okay. There are some people who will say, right, this is what I'm going to do. I need to do this. I'm going to get started. And they'll just get on with it like I did. But I also know that sometimes people are afraid of making the wrong decisions, especially if there's a history of an eating disorder or trying and failing at different diets. It's like, well, what if I try this and it doesn't work? What if this is the wrong thing? What if I did that? What if I somehow did that bit wrong? What if this isn't right? And so I'm making, if I may, I'm making this appeal to you guys as Healing Foods Coach. For anyone out there, whether and you may have already started on carnivore, maybe you just need a little bit of one-to-one cheering on. Maybe you just want a little bit of accountability. Maybe you had a minor slip and you just need someone to help guide you through. Again, without judgment, not telling you what to do, because you're the one who you guys are the ones who have to make the choice of I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna try it, I'm gonna stick with it. You guys are the ones who have to decide what you want to eat, where you're going to get the food from, how you're going to approach the carbs and the crap in your life, and what you're going to do about it. I can't do it for you. Obviously, you guys have to do that for yourselves. However, if you want to have someone personally cheering you on, through a Zoom chat assessment or a weekly appointment, that's what I'm offering in my coaching. Okay. And again, without judgment. We don't always do it perfectly. I have had failures myself. I've had fallbacks and slip ups along the way before I finally got it right. I've shared this in other videos, but my first Christmas going carnivore was the first Christmas when we had lockdown, and I was still struggling with carb cravings. I hadn't eaten any, but I was still craving stuff. My husband, out of the goodness of his heart, went out and bought gluten-free shortbread cookies because I love shortbread. But I knew I couldn't have the regular ones because of the wheat, obviously the gluten, plus sugar and all the other crap. But I made a decision that I was maybe going to allow myself a more keto-friendly treat just to take the edge off that sweetness. So he got that for me. It was made with artificial sweetener and stevia, and it had almond flour. So there was no gluten, but it had a load of other garbage that was not good for me. But I ate one, and I then proceeded to polish off the entire package of 12 within 24 hours, which just showed me that really I can't do anything that tastes sweet ever at all. Okay. But I'm far from perfect. And I say that because I had to work through it on my own, and perhaps it wouldn't have reached that point if there was someone else I knew of who had been through this, who had been doing carnivore that I could actually talk to in person, not just send a message off and hope they got back to me, but just on a one-to-one. Hey, you know what? I'm doing carnivore. I'm feeling pretty great, but I really struggled. This tempted me. Here's what I did. Crap. Now what? I had to get myself back up on that horse by myself. And I offer my services because not only to help somebody who's brand new newbie and not quite sure, it's overwhelming. Where do I start? How do I do this? But also those of us who've maybe been doing it for a month or two, maybe even longer. And we have cravings and we have struggles. I need to talk to somebody. How can I help? And so I put this out there. If that is something that any of you potentially are interested in or feel like, even if it's a one-off, please feel free to get in touch on my website, www.healingfoodscoach.com. I would love to hear from you. We can set up an appointment. Again, if you're already doing carnivore, but you just want someone you can talk to and sort of work through the emotional challenges, not because I'm this perfect person, because I've lived it and I've been there and I get it. And sometimes I still have those struggles and we can help each other. That's the whole purpose of it. Okay? It's a little harder to give you individual feedback or advice or just support and encouragement through a video that you're going to watch after I've recorded this and I'm no longer live. You know what I mean? Anyways, that's why I'm making that appeal. Obviously, no one's under any obligation to do that. I'm just saying, hey, I'm not just some person, obviously. I do have my certification as a nutrition coach. I do have qualifications as a level two to offer level two counseling for people who maybe have struggles with some depression or anxiety. I cannot diagnose, and I'm not claiming to be someone who can diagnose, and I'm certainly not going to be the person to tell you, oh, don't take any medication or don't do that or do this. No, I'm just saying these are all things I've struggled with and lived with. I've been there, making it through on the other side, and I would love the opportunity to help if I can. Okay, that's all. So enough of my little spiel. Thank you guys immensely for all your support and for sticking with me, for constantly being encouraging and positive. Um, and I look forward to hearing from all of you how God is working in your lives. Um, and again, whether it's for you, whether it's the God of Jesus, whether it's your definition of a higher power, it's all good. Everyone is welcome. Okay, absolutely. And I can't wait to hear some of the things that you guys are going through and overcoming. I always love hearing those stories. So thank you for your attention. Thank you so much for your kindness, your commitment, your words, and your encouragement. and I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye for now.